your comments over here. So this week, lately, we have been talking a lot about mindset and expectations. And when I asked you all what the worst advice you had ever received regarding your mood and your hormones was, y'all told me everything from get on happy pills to it's normal and so many variations of get over it, just deal with it, think about something else, right? So if our mindset is so powerful and all of the advice that you've been given has just been to ignore how you're feeling, get over it, think of something else, then why the hell isn't it working, right? And the short answer is your biology. So what do I mean by this? Well, first is the things that you're feeling, the overwhelm, the irritability, the anxiety, the fatigue, these are all signs of hormonal imbalance, but they're not the actual problem. And you could even go so far as to say that the hormone imbalance itself isn't even the actual problem. These are just the symptoms, which means that something is causing these symptoms, right? Think about a pimple, for example. The pimple doesn't just appear, right? You might see it pop up and it feels like it just appeared, especially if you're somebody who doesn't get them often. But most women can actually trace that back to something. So an upcoming menstrual cycle or binging on a bunch of sweets or alcohol or going through a really stressful time, right? What that means is that the problem isn't actually the pimple. Something happened to cause that. Does that make sense to you guys? Let me know in the comments by giving me a thumbs up, dropping a 1 if that makes sense to you. Because it's the same way with your hormones. They don't just become imbalanced for the fun of it, right? Our body desperately, desperately wants to be in balance. And that's why it gives us these symptoms that it does, because it wants us to listen. It wants us to do something. And when that something, oftentimes multiple things, are causing your hormones to be imbalanced, that means that your biology is being impacted. And that can look like these physical and emotional symptoms that you're feeling, but being told to ignore. So going back to why we can't just think our way out of bad moods and feeling on edge all the time and being exhausted and burnt out and all these things, right? Let's think about if you're repeatedly thinking things like, the worst will happen, or you're what ifing every situation, or stressing over your kids putting their shoes on too slow when you're already too late, or heaven forbid, putting a kid in a car seat, right? All of those things, they create stress on your body, which means that your biology is constantly triggering these stress hormones like adrenaline and norepinephrine and cortisol to kick into gear to respond to that mental threat. And this isn't even taking into account all of the other things that cause a stress response in our body. This isn't talking about frankenfood and processed foods and sugars and medication, birth control, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications. This isn't talking about birth trauma, past trauma. This isn't talking about environmental factors and any of these other things that cause stress in your body at some point. I am only talking about your mindset. So if you have had this negative mindset for a while and you find that you can no longer talk your way out of it, like it just feels easier to be negative and angry than to be positive and happy, then that's a sign that your biology is broken down and you've depleted those feel-good, happy hormones in favor of these hormones that trigger anxiety and overwhelm and the like to keep us safe, to keep us primed to fight. And when I work with clients inside of the Calm and Balanced Mama method, normally I see this happen in 4 different ways, okay? Y'all know I like my numbers. So first is the adrenals. So this is a direct response to the cortisol demands that you are placing on your body, where your adrenals can become like tired, for a lack of a better word. And the normal cortisol rhythm, which helps to regulate things in your body like your sleep-wake cycle, your metabolism, your immune system, and even your blood pressure, has to work even harder to do what you're asking it to do. And that can cause a lot of fatigue and even things like lightheadedness, dizziness, weight gain, some of those things. The second is blood sugar imbalance. So the adrenal glands actually play a really critical role in regulating blood sugar. So that's getting the energy from what you eat into your cells. And when our adrenals are struggling, like I just discussed, this process can also become impaired, your blood sugar. And what I see in a lot of women is that this is where they get those sudden outbursts of irritability. Like you're fine one moment and the next moment you are just going off, right? And then those energy crashes. After lunch in the afternoon, you just crash, right? And you have to take a nap and they feel like they come on out of nowhere. The third is inflammation. So this is almost always present when we are under constant stress. Again, this is because of cortisol's role as a primary anti-inflammatory mechanism in our body. So when we see aches and pains and headaches and migraines and no motivation, that's a big one, and this overall malaise and not feeling good physically, a lot of times this can be associated with this low level inflammation in the body. Okay? This is also a really big one in thyroid conditions. And I bring this up because several of my clients have also had thyroid issues. And what we have seen is that the numbers on their thyroid labs, they actually stabilize to better levels and then remain there when we're focusing on this, okay? And the last one, number 4, is the gut-brain connection. So oftentimes what I see here with my clients is poor sleep patterns because of how the hormones and neurotransmitters are actually made in our gut. And if you want to hear more about that, go check the guides where I talked about this last week in the connection between your poop and your gut, okay? This might also look like traditional GI issues of gas and bloating and even constipation or IBS. IBS is almost always something other than just your bowels, and it can have a big gut-brain connection, it can have a big hormonal connection. And all of this can lead to a depletion of stomach acid, which, as I've talked about before, can then put us at risk for bacterial imbalance and dysbiosis, poor nutrient absorption, and even more low-grade inflammation and a sluggish liver. So if that sounds like you and you feel like your biology is actually stopping your mindset from being able to work, from stopping you from being able to just tell yourself to just deal with it and feel better, here's what you do, okay? 2 steps. First, you have to break the positive cortisol feedback loop. So when I say the positive cortisol feedback loop, what I mean is that feeling you have when, say, you've tried something to get control of your mood and energy, and maybe it worked a little bit, but then as soon as something went wrong, you just spiral and you just start having problems again, okay? Let me know in the comments if you can relate to that or you've had an experience on what that was like for you like that, okay? When this happens, it is because your stress response is stuck ramping up those hormonal levels that trigger the anxiety, the irritability, the impatience. And then because you're feeling that way, that then creates another stress response that tells your body you're in danger. So you see this loop, right? And that's why no matter what you try, you're always reverting backwards when stress happens. So the first step is to break this loop. So to do that, what you have to do is you have to remap that gut-brain connection using targeted mood foods that stabilize the mood chemistry, that balance your blood sugar so that they can reduce low-lying stress within your body, so that you're energized, so that you have this mental clarity to feel in control of your life, and you can really get back to being that high-achieving, performing woman that you know you are, who can handle whatever life throws your way without stress completely knocking you on the floor. The second step, once you have broken that positive cortisol feedback loop, is to then rebuild and replete those mood, energy, and repair hormones that got eaten up in that loop. Because what happens is too much stress for too long, it doesn't just make us feel stressed out and ramped up. What it does is it actually depletes our feel-good hormones in the process, making it harder to feel good both physically and mentally. And this double whammy is exactly why the second step is to rebuild and repair those hormones that I just mentioned, your mood, energy, and repair hormones, because it's not enough just to stop the stressors and to break that positive cortisol feedback loop. We have to then go behind ourselves and repair the damage that has been caused. And the way to do this is by focusing on both the circadian and infradian rhythms through things like hormone regulating movement, removing hormone hijackers, and then increasing your consumption of these hormonal precursors. So the nutrients that we need to create these hormones in our body so that you're making those feel-good neurotransmitters, those happy hormones, so that you can improve your sleep and rest and repair and wake up recovered no matter what is going on, okay? And then once you have done those 2 steps and you've addressed the symptoms of your hormone imbalance, then you can work on finding that stress resilience, that calm in the storm. Because the truth is, I don't know if y'all heard my kids screaming in the background, stress never leaves us. And that's where putting a framework in place so that these mindset pieces can work and so that you can rewire your brain so that when another stressful event happens, your mind and your body, so your biology, don't perceive it as this major threat or danger, and you can stay calm. That's where that becomes really helpful. But if you haven't done those first 2 steps, breaking the positive cortisol feedback loop and then rebuilding and repleting those mood, energy, and repair hormones, you might find yourself falling back into these old patterns and these old habits every time stress crops up. And what I see is that these two steps are so often missed with other solutions, the medication, the therapy, right? Because you can only upregulate and talk your hormones into doing so much if the hormones aren't there to begin with, right? Step two. So you have to actually support them and rebuild them. You have to do these steps in order for some of these other strategies to work. So I hope that that was helpful for you. If you have any questions or you want to talk about what these steps might look like for you in your own life and how they can help you go from overwhelmed and burnt out to happy and feeling in control again, let's chat. I will post a link to book a call above and below this video. We just hop on the phone together. We talk about what you're struggling with, what you've tried, what's keeping you stuck, and what a path forward might look like for you. And whether or not that's me, that's totally fine. Just make sure if you're looking for somebody to help you with this, that you find someone who is looking at why your hormones are imbalanced in the first place and addresses those factors instead of just throwing some hormone regulating supplement or some solution, some quick fix solution at you. All right, everyone, I hope you have a wonderful day and happy Veterans Day to everyone who is serving or who has served or who supports a partner or family member who serves. Your sacrifice is not lost on me, and I thank you for everything that you do. So here is to a calm and balanced rest of your day. Good evening, y'all.